Sorry for the interruption. Okay. Let me see. Can you hear me all right? Can somebody post in the chat? You able to hear me? Awesome. Okay, well, let's start. I think there are only 3 people here, though. That's okay. I think other people can join if they want. So let's talk a little bit about myself. I am a senior architect at Kalamuna, and I'm Drupal 7 and 8 Acquia certified Grandmaster. And I am very passionate about front-end development, even though I am a backend developer by day. So today I hope to share with you all my tips and tricks about how we can make a backend development life easier when you have to debug front-end and learn some front-end techniques, right? So today we will cover debugging tools in different browsers, CSS debugging, accessibility, JavaScript debugging, and which browser is best for the job. And also we will cover remote debugging and help tools. So without further ado, let's get started. We'll start with CSS debugging grid. And if you haven't worked with grid and don't know what it is, it's a very nice technology, and it basically revamps the life of front-end developers have to leave when styling all the tables, grid cards, and everything else. It's fantastic. It allows you to build grids very easily and all in one browser, and you don't have to use any JavaScript libraries for that. You don't have to go with floats. It's very easy, and it's very responsive, and it's nice, and it's great, and it really works well until it doesn't. So today we will cover how you can debug them. So to debug the grids in Firefox, you will have to enable that grid extension. To enable the grid inspector extension, when you inspect an element, you can press grid peel next to the grid element, and you will see that nice green outline with gutters and everything else, which is fantastic because that allows you to see the gutters between grid elements, and it also allows you to see a container of your grid. But it can push it a little bit further. So if you go down here, you will see that Grid Inspector provides you some additional features that you can look into Mozilla Grid Playground or in the code pen. So feel free to check on those. I will be posting the slides attaching to my session, so you will be able to look at them if you want on your own later. So if you go deeper into the grid inspector in Firefox, you will be able to toggle some additional options. And the first option is a display line item numbers and column numbers. This is fantastic because it allows you to actually define complicated layouts such as sidebars and asides and centers and containers and headers and everything like that. So pretty awesome stuff, and it's just great. Basically, it allows you to debug when you set up, which column should span how many different grid container elements, or how wide it is or how tall it is. Those numbers are very crucial when you build in the grid template. So you can see in my example here, I'm using very simple template of a grid templates columns, 150 pixels, but technically you can use those numbers to say span from, let's say, -3 to -1, and that will cover the entire full area of two different grid items. So there will be top right square and bottom right square. So those numbers really help you to construct these complicated templates. The next one that I really love about the grid options is display area names. Again, if you're building real templates with grids, it is nice to have area names. They help front-end developers and back-end developers later on to identify basically what areas that's supposed to be in the design. So if you build a complicated template, you can name it header and then footer, sidebar, and you know that grid component actually belongs to this area. So that's another great option. And by default, those names are hidden, and Firefox exposes them if you toggle that checkbox. And another one that I absolutely love, this is extend lines infinitely. That really helps when you're trying to debug the alignment of your grid within other page elements. Sometimes your designer comes in and is like, the logo needs to align with the grid, or the logo needs to be 2 rem offset of the grid, or things like that. And it is really easy and very awesome. You can actually align the logo however you'd like, and you can see this grid lines going right up. That means that you can see all the way through and align your items properly. So Firefox does a fantastic job of debugging grids and seeing what's going on, what might be not working, and how to align items in it. The next one is Chrome, and unfortunately Chrome doesn't do such a great job for it, and that's pretty much what you see on the screen. It's what Chrome does in terms of grid debugging. It doesn't show area numbers, it doesn't show area names, it doesn't really show the lines, pretty much doesn't show anything, and Chrome is not very useful when it comes to the grid debugging. There are some workarounds though. You can also just install a couple add-ons. One of the add-ons, it's called Greedy. You can actually use it and install in Chrome store. There are others. They're not as great as Firefox are, but that's an option for you definitely to take a look and play around with it. So if Chrome is browser of your choice, then I do recommend installing those add-ons and seeing if they solve the issue for you. Flexbox debugging. So let's talk a little bit about the Flexbox debugging. Flexbox is like something that I like to call a younger brother of Grid. Technically, that's not true because Flexbox hit the shelves of CSS development earlier than Grid. However, Flexbox is one-dimensional versus Grid is two-dimensional. So we think that Grid allows you to monitor rows and columns and construct layouts with rows and columns. And Flexbox doesn't. It can go into one direction. So it's either a horizontal one, a row, or a vertical one, a column. So that is set. Flexbox debugging tools are also great in Firefox. So similar idea, if you want to turn on a Flexbox inspector, you can just press on the Flex peel, and you will see the Flexbox items right in there. And similar to grid, you will see the outline and the gutters between the items. However, you will see other properties that are specific to the Flexbox. One of the great things that I like is that if you don't know CSS, which some backend developers might not know, you don't need to know how to write CSS selectors and properties. You can actually toggle Flexbox properties right out of the Flex container. So down here, you'll see ul.flex container, and there are two items that says row and wrap. So you can actually toggle column and no wrap and other properties right out of here, and Firefox will redraw the flex for you. So that will help you to debug. You can also go a little bit further. So down one line, you see that Flexbox provides an outline, and you can see base flex items. And again, I created a code pen for you to play with it. But if you dive into the flex item itself, you will be able to see what this flex item is doing, so how it behaves itself within the Flexbox. So all you need to do is basically just click on the item in the Flex Inspector, and you will be able to see base size and actual size. And it's very important, because if you don't, then you won't be able to see the difference, how your item is growing or how it is shrinking. So when you're using your Flex display and setting growth and shrink properties, it's very important. And you will see that on the right, there is two lines. One is like black outline, and another one is dotted one. That will show you the difference between the bases, which is basically how you started your flex item, and the final, so how it was calculated. Was it a shrunk? Was it actually enlarged? So that's what you can see within this box. And it also shows you the final size, which is very useful when you're trying to debug and see why your item isn't growing as much as you'd like it to, or actually the opposite, why it grows beyond any proportion. All right, so that was two of the most popular topics in terms of CSS as grid and Flexbox that I use for the layouts. Let's dive into the typography. Typography went up and beyond in the recent years in terms of new CSS properties that are available for you to style. And there are also new concepts like variable fonts, things that we haven't even imagined before. Nowadays, they are possible, and those are just fantastic. The reason why they are great is because you can have a fat font style. By that, I mean that before, if you worked with fonts, you would attach fonts, like different font families to your pages. So, for example, you will need an italic font. You can attach an italic font family. Then you want a bold one, you will attach this one, and a regular one, so on and so forth. So that you may end up with 5-6 font families, especially if they have slightly different look and feel than just font weight and browser. Then nowadays, you can actually have fat font or variable font. So that means that all of the properties, they actually combined inside that big font file. And you don't have to create multiple font families for that. But with all of this flexibility, it needs some options to debug. So again, Firefox does a fantastic job of it. It created a fonts inspector. So what you need to do in here is to select any element in your DOM that has a font, let's say a header or a paragraph or a div, whatever it is that has font family property. And then on there, you will be able to open the font inspector. So you click on the property, find the font family, and immediately on the right, you will be able to see a font inspector. So if you don't see it, it might be hidden for you in that drop-down menu that hosts layout, computed, and all of that in Firefox. So just click on the drop-down menu and select fonts. What the font inspector allows you to do is allows you to play with the fonts live. which means that you don't have to actually, again, guess CSS properties or guess what this font takes. You can actually use these toggles or sliders to adjust spacing, line height, sizing, weights, and depending on how your font is set up, how many properties it exposes, you can actually toggle most of them right here and see how it will look. Like, see if it works or looks really nice, or if it doesn't. Some variable fonts look very futuristic, have swirls around them and other effects. I have, in this example, just Articulate, which is not a variable font, it's just a normal font. But you can see that still I have all of the normal options that are exposed for me, and it's very easy. I don't have to guess the numbers. They just here, sliders very easy to use, and I can see the changes right away on the screen. Especially good for multilingual sites because, you know, like Spanish may be a little bit longer than English words. So you may want to play with it to adjust some styling for your multilingual sites for Spanish and for English separately. The next one is Chrome. So again, unfortunately, Chrome doesn't have a very good font inspector. However, it has fantastic add-ons. So one of two I do recommend if you'd like to use. It's Font Finder or Font Inspector. They're very similar to what I just showed to you in Firefox, and they're great if Chrome is your browser of choice. All right, that was it for the fonts. Now we are going into accessibility. More and more countries restrict more and more rules into the websites and meeting accessibility standards, which is fantastic. It makes web accessible for everybody. And it's actually inclusivity as well, not just accessibility. So accessibility testing is very important, and there are thousands of tools that are doing it and doing it really well. Today, we will be touching on what browser does provide to you, just because you want to run a quick test, you want to do a very quick scan, you want to confirm something. This is when I would recommend to do the browser. Obviously, these tools that browsers provide shouldn't be going like as your only accessibility testing tool. I do recommend you to, you know, expand and use more robust accessibility tools like X, Dynamapper, Siteimprove to actually do full testing. And automated testing is never enough, but accessibility tools in browser help you to quickly confirm something or quickly see some things. So here, fortunately, Chrome is in the lead, which is great. I love Chrome, and I like that is leading the rolling here. You can see that in Chrome, you have two options. One is the standard accessibility panel, and it doesn't show you very much. What it does show to you is accessibility tree, and that's not a DOM tree, it's a tree how a screen reader will read through your accessibility stack. And that's very important to understand, and that means that you as a developer understand how people with screen readers or assistive technologies will see or use your website. So it's important to keep that clean, and that makes sense for the user. You will also see any possible area attributes that you may be using on that particular page. You see that I don't have much. And you can see computed properties as well. On the right, you see that there is another way more robust technology built into Chrome. If you haven't ever ran Lighthouse audits, I do recommend them. They're awesome, and they can actually audit the site for a lot of different things like performance, progressive best practices SEO, but one of them is accessibility. And I do recommend you to run it separately and to run it for desktop and mobile, because sometimes you will get different results and very surprising results. It runs in seconds, and all you need to do is just click on that Lighthouse tab in the development tools and run the report, like generate the report, and you will see a lot of accessibility concerns that Chrome sees and some additional remediation practices and techniques that might be applied to fix those issues. The next one that I really like in Chrome is a color picker. So you will see that in Chrome, again, next to any color, you have a little swatch that you can press, and that will open a color picker. And that doesn't only allow you to pick a color from the screen, but also allows you to check the contrast. So you see that sometimes it returns false positive. So on the left, we have our contrast ratio saying that we are not passing. The reason for that is because we have a background image instead of a background color, and automated technologies that typically cannot, cannot really read the background image color. So in this case, it's very nice to grab that eyedropper and pick the color. And you will see that as soon as I pick the color, we are passing the accessibility standards on our side. So very nice tool, really great, and especially great if you're quickly fixing something. Let's say you got an emergency ticket for your PM and your front end is away, and they say, we got a report from some site improve, and we need this link debugger to make sure it passes accessibility. Awesome, you can play with that color right in browser, check the color picker, check the contrast ratio, and you will be done in seconds. Previously, you had to actually go into specific dedicated sites or use an extension and your design software, something like on Photoshop or Sketch or Figma to figure out the contrast ratio. Now you don't have to do it. You can do it right in browser. That's pretty awesome. Another one is Firefox. Firefox also has accessibility, and it's very awesome. You can select all issues. You can select certain issues that you're mostly interested in. So like, is the keyboard navigation is working correctly? Is the contrast is up to date, and the text labels? So you can see that we have a lot of labels here that are saying that contrast is not passing accessibility. Again, same idea here. We have the background image versus the background color. So it kind of automatically wrongly manipulate our errors. However, in reality, we do pass the accessibility on this one. Another one that I really like is, again, color picker in the Firefox. And in Firefox, similar idea. You pick a swatch and you find the contrast. And if you click separately, not on the swatch, but on actually contrast label issue, then it will highlight it on the screen for you and it will tell you where you're not passing the accessibility. Again, because we have the background image, it tells us that we don't, but you see that I clicked on a swatch on the right and I picked the correct color right from the background, and it tells us that we pass. The other one that I really love is a color vision simulator that is available in Firefox. So if you've never been in this danger zone of additional advanced browser settings, I recommend explore them, because Firefox has so many of them that are hidden from the typical users, but they're just fantastic. So in order to open up a color vision simulator, you go into a new tab in the browser and type about config, and then you press return. Firefox will tell you that you are entering the danger zone. Tell it it's okay. And then set the GFX web render property to true. Once you've done that, restart your browser, and you will be able to see the simulator. So down in the accessibility tab, you will see a new option that's called simulate. And in there, you will be able to simulate all of the different color modes for different vision problems or vision diseases that people might have. So that could be low red, color blindness, and all the other ones. So I'm currently rendering our homepage in low red, and it looks very different than it looks to people without these problems. So the great thing about it is that it is merging the border between the inclusivity and accessibility, because your site can be completely accessible. However, if you rely on the color to convey your message, so one of the most obvious examples would be red. That could be associated with danger. So, for example, alerts should be red. And that's the only thing that actually distinguishes that block of text as an alert, then you may be losing of its urgency because people won't be able to see it as red. So that was an eye-opening experience for me to see the site in a different color vision simulator. just to understand how effective we are, how effective our message is independently on a color. I do recommend also to try to test your site in black and white to see how that works for people as well. Some of our government agency clients who were very strict on accessibility standards made us seam everything in black and white and then in color, to ensure that we are not losing the message and that we are actually not relying on the color to convey important information. All right. Now we are into the world of JavaScript debugging. And JavaScript debugging is fun. Who doesn't like JavaScript debugging? Browser tools jump into so many different miles ahead of what you can do with JavaScript. And I will just scratch the surface of most useful tools here. So one of them is code folding, and it's not enabled by default. So you can just press on the button in the preferences of your development tools and enable code folding. Whoever wrote a ginormous function that is spanning multiple different lines and accidentally pressed enter or accidentally lost it and had to scroll off the lines of JavaScript. Now when you can code fold, you can collapse all of the needed functions, and you can continue debugging and reading your code and without any additional distractions. So a must for me. Another one is conditional breakpoints. Did you know that in Firefox you can set a conditional breakpoint? That was wow for me as well, especially in Drupal when you have behaviors that call codes multiple times over and over and over and over again. Great. You add the condition, you set up that like call that if statement or put that breakpoint when my variable equals 25. And that's when it's called. It's awesome. It saves time and it's very convenient. All you need to do is to right click on the breakpoint and say set conditional breakpoint. The next one is Multiline console, another hidden gem in Firefox. By default, it allows you to code in one line. If you press on that little button of a book, then you will be able to actually expand it and create a multi-line console. No more lost code that is executed because you accidentally press enter. So just copy paste the entire snippets of code out of your code editor, right in the browser console, press run, and this is how you can easily debug on production. Very awesome. Love it so much. Don't like the multi-line, press the button again, and it will be a single line console. Awesome. And attached event debugger. That's another great thing that I absolutely love. Basically, every event that is attached to your DOM element has this little event flag in the DOM inspector. You can press on it, and you can see all of the different events that are attached to your DOM element. And it's great because if you're trying to debug a design system like Bootstrap or Foundation, anything like that, that attaching multiple different events, this is a way to go for you. That allows you to see all of the events and make sure that you can override them or detach them if needed. And the last chapter of today's session is mobile remote debugging. So mobile remote debugging allows you to connect your device and debug on device while checking the output in browser and have a console and have everything else. So that's very awesome, especially if, in a simulator in the browser, it works fantastic, and then your client watches it on device and say, hey, that menu that doesn't really open for me on mobile, and you don't know why it works in browser when you put it in remote on responsive debugging, right? And that's the time when you would spin it off on the device. So on iOS, it's very easy. You will need to have a Mac computer and an iOS device. Open Safari on both of them. In the settings of your iOS device, you will need to activate the web inspector. Then on your iDevice, you go to any website, and then on your Mac, you will be able to select that device from the development menu in Safari. however, look something like that. So you see here, I actually went to Drupal.org on my iPhone, and I'm choosing it in the development tools on my iMac. And after that, I am able to press different breakpoints in Safari, or even actually code in console output, and debug it like that. I can also save the file right into my device and load this JavaScript without deploying to production. So very powerful tools. For Android, you can do it in Chrome. You can also do it in Firefox. I do recommend doing it in Chrome because obviously Android and Google products work best well together. And on device, you just allow debugging through USB. And there in Chrome, go to inspect devices. You will be able to see your device selected and type in the URL of a site that you want to debug. Once you press open, you will be able to use console as if it was a normal debugging. And that's pretty much it. That's all I wanted to talk to you today. If you have any questions, please type them in the chat. If you don't, I will be attaching my slides to my session. And thank you so much for joining me today. Right? Looks like no questions. Right. Thank you so much, John. And I will talk to you later. Okay.